Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Wednesday night live stream for Week 6 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Of course, the intro just played, the incredible guitar solo, but we join you today via live stream to, obviously deliver a lot of injury news. I did not anticipate to see Michael Pittman Jr. going to potentially miss the next couple weeks, and if not even that, go to the injured reserve. Of course, earlier today, we were already given confirmation that Nico Collins is going to the injured reserve, which wasn't something that was originally anticipated based on the overall remarks that were originally made by D'Amico Ryans, the head coach of the Houston Texans, but injuries continue to build. It's all about being able to at least just roll with the punches at this point of the season. I mean, really, the injuries that have been sustained thus far this season are ridiculous. The volume of which they are occurring, additionally to the players at which they are occurring to, is gotten to an extent to where we are just reacting and just trying to stay ahead of the curve and trying to hope that our team stays healthy. On top of that, there were a lot of players that did not participate in practice today. That isn't to say that those players are absolutely going to miss this week, but obviously it's not a good sign if you miss Wednesday, but we'll kind of keep that monitored as we progress tomorrow and of course Friday's practice in order to determine which of these players are potentially available to go. Earlier today, we did drop our wide receiver rankings video in regards to our top 40 wide receivers for Week 6. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to do so. Once I recorded that video, again, there was no information regarding Michael Pittman Jr. being, potentially injured and not only missing this week, but for future weeks to come. So as we progress, of course, I'll answer questions, refer to these rankings or yesterday's rankings or potentially the rankings that come out tomorrow in regards to quarterback and tight ends going into the week. But do not forget this upcoming Sunday morning, starting at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, because again, this upcoming Sunday, there is a London game that begins at 6:30 a.m. PST. Therefore, I will start my stream 30 minutes before that at 6 a.m. We'll have updated rankings for our live stream on Sunday morning for those of you who are interested. Be sure to swing on by. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's get into answering questions. First and foremost, I had seen a question in the live chat before I even fired it up. Donald Smith had asked me, Andrew, what defense are you playing for your teams this week? My Chiefs defense is on a bye week. Look, so I play in a lot of leagues, but it's diversified, really. Like my main leagues, I picked up Denver last week, and I'm just going to roll with them again. As for the other leagues in which I was not able to get Denver, or I stuck with like Seattle or something of that extent, I have Minnesota. I've now positioned myself to play Houston or Philadelphia this week by picking them up via waivers or, picking them up, because nobody went after them and I was able to get a free, waiver pickup in the overall circumstance. Okay. So for those of you who are interested, again, that is those are the main defenses we want to go after. Like I want to test Drake May. I wouldn't mind the idea of testing Spencer Rattler with Tampa Bay's defense, but that defense just doesn't play well. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit sketchy. Okay. Anyway, first question of the day via Super Chat. Again, if you guys are going to send in a question, please be sure to include your scoring format, whether that is in a Super Chat format or whether it's in the live stream, live chat. Thank you. Football is Life sends in the first question, says, Josh Allen, Rico, and Evans for Baker and Lamb. Wow. Okay, listen, Josh Allen, 9 for 30 passing, not a great overall week. It didn't look good at all. Some would argue he was potentially concussed. I'd even argue that was the case in the late half of that game after he took the whiplash. Now, are we willing to give away Josh Allen and Evans and Rico Dowdle in exchange for Baker and Lamb? Listen, when Josh Allen goes back to being Josh Allen, okay, he will be a better play than Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, again, was great last year. He was a top 12 option. He'll continue to be that this season, but he doesn't have the rushing upside that is provided. That being said, if you're in a position within your league to where you have studs across the board and you're just basically assembling the gauntlet of players, like the Infinity Gauntlet, and you have studs across the board and Lamb is just another one of these monsters that is going to be a 20-point producer, like I don't mind that. But that's only if that's the circumstance. If the rest of the context of your team is just like an average team, I don't know if I'm actually giving away Josh Allen for Baker Mayfield, even with the Lamb context versus Evans and Rico. It's just very much so specific to what the team kind of looks like. If you want to type in your team into the live chat, Football is Life, I'd be more than happy to give it a look. Matthew Schutz sends in a question, says, PPR trade help, Christian McCaffrey and Marvin Harrison Jr. or James Cook / Garrett Wilson? Christian McCaffrey, Marvin Harrison, James Cook, Garrett Wilson. Okay, so considering there is no mention of Mason in that overall conversation, I'd rather just have James Cook and Garrett Wilson, to be honest. I don't want to have Christian McCaffrey on my team unless I have the insurance policy of Jordan Mason alongside of him. Because again, there's too much risk involved with a potential. I mean, again, he's been out for this long. Who's to say they don't continue to hold him out? That's my only concern. Like you can get to a scenario where, by the end of this month, where again, it's projected that he comes back early November. Who's to say that nothing else goes wrong? Another re-aggravation, another injury, another trip to Germany, and then, we'll see him in December, and then your fantasy season's done, right? So at that point, I just rather have the players that are going to play now and provide, value to my team. Justin says, should I trade Olave for Mixon? Fair trade, question mark? I mean, Mixon's not practicing again. So if you want to pick up Mixon, that's fine. But I mean, evidently, you're just going to have to go pick up Darragum Bawale or Damian Pierce. I think he practiced earlier today, Cam Akers. Like now it's just a running back by committee in that backfield. So really, there's not like a singular player that is going to absorb all of the value in the absence of Mixon. So, I mean, again, his age, his injury, and the fact that it's taken this long is not very much so exciting me on the prospect of him. But if you were to give me a guarantee, Andrew, he's going to be healthy for the remainder of the year, I'd assume that the guy could get himself 15 touches a game and would be the more valuable prospect in comparison to Olave, depending on how this quarterback situation goes for the New Orleans Saints. Dragon the Beast sends in a question, says PPR Dynasty, CD for Ayuk, Mooney, and Bigsby. Nope, I'd rather just keep CeeDee Lamb. Thank you very much. Moving on to Head Shop, who sends in a question. Head Shop says, Goff or Darnold the rest of season. Okay. Okay, look, here's the thing. The last 2 seasons, Jared Goff has been hyper efficient and hyper consistent. The last 2 years, he's pretty much averaged about 17 points per game in a 4-point per passing touchdown format. So if he's going to continue to be a 17-point per game player on a consistent rate, again, he's a part of a great offense, fantastic. But ultimately, when Darnold gets back Hawkinson, I mean, unless Goff is going to go back to being what he was last year, which was significantly better than what he has produced thus far, I feel like Darnold could very easily keep pace, if not outproduce him in the coming future. Especially considering like the running game for the Minnesota Vikings isn't as what's the word I'm looking for? The Detroit Lions rely upon their running game because that is the first and foremost attack for the offense. They predicate everything off of the run. The Minnesota Vikings have always been a pass-first team because that's how Kevin O'Connell has structured it, right? Last season, prior to Kirk Cousins' injury, they had the most passing attempts per game, as a team. Obviously, once they had to move to playing, downs, Downs, Joshua Dobbs, all the other quarterbacks that they had in Minnesota last year, the passing rate went down. But ultimately, this is a pass-first offense. So I'd argue that Darnold could be the more valuable rest of the season. Giggs sends in a question. Says, hi, Andrew. In a full PPR, trade Dobbins, Dobbins, Downs, everything is just, it's all cooked. Trade Dobbins and Pickens for Mooney. My wide receivers are we have Lamb, Godwin, Ayuk, DJ Moore, Pickens. Running backs are Jacobs, Pollard, Swift, Bigsby, and Dobbins. I think you're giving up a little bit too much just for Darnell Mooney. Like, I get it. The last couple weeks here, averaging 9.25 targets per game. It is Kirktober. It all makes sense. But ultimately, I do think you may be giving up too much. Like, when I look at your running back depth, you have Jacobs, Pollard, right? And then you have Swift, Bigsby, Dobbins. Swift could go back to being irrelevant at any given moment. Bigsby doesn't have to be the answer for that backfield going forward. ETN could get healthy and take over once again. So giving away Dobbins could really put yourself in a tough situation in terms of running back depth. I'd rather be willing to give away a Swift potential option or Bigsby if you can rather than Dobbins. Because in terms of rest season value, that's not the running back I want to give away. If you can get away with one of those, then sure. Thank you. Xander O'Malley sends in a question, says, what's Taysom Hill's value with Carr out? I mean, at this point, here's the thing. Taysom Hill, the only value he really does present is if he's playing quarterback or they're on the goal line. So if Rattler is going to if he's going to present an offense that is actually going to be efficient and we can effectively move the ball down the field and it's going to set up goal line opportunities for Taysom Hill, then sure, fantastic. But again, we don't know what this offense is going to look like with the rookie quarterback. It's going to take at least a week. Maybe if you want to roster Taysom Hill, leave him on your bench. Let's see how the week progresses against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then henceforth, we can get a little bit of a gauge as to how they're going to utilize Taysom Hill. outside of the goal line scenarios, which again, they'll probably want to lean upon the running game a little bit more in order to take a lot of the pressure off of the quarterback, set up more play action opportunities. But ultimately, at this point, outside of goal line carries that can lead to a touchdown, Taysom Hill doesn't have that much value. Thank you. Celerus sends in a question. Says, J.K. Puka, Terry for Bijan and Dell. So J.K. Dobbins, Puka Nacua, Terry McLaurin for Bijan and Dell. Ultimately, I think this is a relatively equal trade. Like the way I see it, right? Bijan Robinson, I would assume like his value rest of season is relatively comparable to like what Puka and J.K. Dobbins can do for you in terms of like trade value. I think that that's like a pretty equal trade. And then Terry has a little bit of an advantage over Dell, but again, Dell will have a little bit of an uptick of production for the next 4 weeks or so, but Terry long-term more valuable. Puka still dealing with an injury. I get it. I honestly think I'd rather just keep the Puka side, but it's very dependent on, can you wait for him? Like if he doesn't come back till week 8 and you're going to lose week 6 and 7 here, and you're already in a pretty bad spot in terms of your overall record, and you're just trying to get a huge boost of wins now, then I'd be okay with it. But outside of that kind of scenario, I think you're giving up a little bit too much. Aiden Hatch sends in a question. Would you trade Jalen Hurts for Malik Neighbors in a super flex full PPR? Okay, here's the thing. Malik Neighbors is like a 20-point per game player, right? So he matches the value of Jalen Hurts. As long as you have a comparable quarterback that is at least like a 15-plus point player that you can pick up and use instead. Let's see here. I have Kyler, Trevor Lawrence, Tua. Yeah, cool. I make the deal. Yeah, give me Neighbors. Now here, it is very concerning that Neighbors for another week in a row here is still in the concussion protocol. I've never really seen a player miss multiple weeks off of a singular concussion. The only time I've ever seen it is if that's the second concussion that they've sustained within the year, because oftentimes it happens where if 2 back-to-back concussions take place, then a player typically goes to the IR based on my experience and what I've seen over the course of the last couple seasons. But outside of those kind of circumstances, this is a very rare situation in which, the injury was sustained. What was it like? It was sustained on September 26th. So we're talking about that's 9 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 14 days. That's 2 full weeks. And still in the concussion protocol. So that's rough, but yes, I would take him for the long-term value. Thank you, Hayden. Aiden, appreciate it. Anthony Cervantes sends in a question, says, start 2. All right, cool. Reed, DK, Flowers. Great to see you. Great to see you as well, Anthony. Look, between the bunch, as of earlier today's video, I have Reed and DK as the highest ranked. If you want to play Flowers over DK, I have no issue with that. I think they're in a very similar kind of position to where they could put up similar numbers, but I think Reed is the must-play out of the 3. Thank you. Yeet sends in a question. Says, Deontay Johnson or BTJ, who do I start? The only issue that I have with BTJ is Jalen Johnson. If I can get a guarantee that he's going to be following, Gabe Davis or something of that extent for the entirety of the game, then I'd be perfectly comfortable throwing him out there. But considering I don't have a guarantee of that, and Carolina takes on Atlanta, which I think is a matchup in which, of course, Deontay Johnson can be far more relevant than where he was last week, I'll probably lean towards Deontay. That's where I have him ranked as in earlier today. Like I had Deontay at my number 18 wide receiver, and I think BTJ was 25, something of that extent. Relatively close. If you want to play BTJ, again, just understand the inherent risk. London game on top of the fact that, the number 1 cornerback of the Bears has played legit football as of late. The Bears, really, their only weakness is that they can't stop the run. Otherwise, they are incredible against the pass as my Dodgers continue to cook. Baby. Ka sends in a question, says, flex Godwin or Debo or Swift. I mean, all 3 of them have great matchups. I'd venture to say between the 3 of them, let's say you're playing in a full PPR, I'm playing either Godwin or Debo. If I had to pick between the 2 of them, in a full PPR, I'd be a little bit more inclined to play Godwin in comparison. If you're in a half PPR, I'd be a little bit more inclined to play Debo because, he's not going to get as many receptions, or I would assume in terms of my projection model, it's not going to be as many. So that kind of gives them a little bit of an edge. Ultimately, they're both incredible plays. But, depending on your format, that's how we'll kind of have to approach it. Let's see here. Where is next question? But why, though? Sends in a question. Very generous, but why, though? Thank you. Says full PPR, 2 flex, and a super flex format. Very well. Traded away A.J. Brown for Bijan Robinson. Now I have Bijan, Kenneth Walker, Zach Moss, Bucky Irving. My wide receivers consist of Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, BTJ, Wicks, Shaheed, Slayton. Okay, very well. Worth the trade. And who would have you put in my flexes? Okay, this week. Okay, got it. Is it worth the trade? Ultimately, considering the running back depth that you require, considering the injuries that you've been dealing with, I'd say yes, it's worth it. You're trading a first-round pick for a first-round pick. That's the way I see it so far. And I do think that trading for Bijan right now is, the lowest you'll probably ever be able to get him. So as it currently stands, pretty solid. As to how I'd set your lineup, obviously Bijan and Kenneth Walker are your two starting running backs. The two starting wide receivers that I would approach with as it currently stands would be, BTJ, along with most likely Shaheed. And then you kind of have to, there's no other players here besides Wicks, Slayton, and Bucky. So Slayton only gets the start if Neighbors is out. Otherwise, it's Bucky, and that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Moving on to Kaw's follow-up question, who says, I have Goddard. Should I drop for Kraft or Komet? Should you drop Goddard for Kraft or Komet? No. You should keep Goddard, and you should drop somebody else in order to pick up Kraft. Thank you. KB sends in a question, says PPR Chuba Hubbard or Tank Dell in the flex. Listen, I think Chuba Hubbard is just too valuable not to start every week. He has just been too good. What did I say yesterday? I think it was like 97 plus rushing yards and a touchdown minimum in each of the last 4 games or each of the last 3 games. And then on top of it has had 4 receptions in each of the last 4 games. Like the guy is just too good. He is playing high quality football, and it's, in my opinion, too difficult to bench him, even in this circumstance of Tank Dell. So yeah, that's the way that I'd go about it. Jesse G says in a half PPR, Michael Wilson, JSN, or Dontavion Wicks. Happy birthday. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. Between the 3, I'll just take JSN as of right now. I thought that Christian Watson was practicing. Like an hour ago, I saw a piece of footage where it was LaFleur and Dobbs interacting on the field, and then it was followed by like a Christian Watson interview. So if Watson's going to play, Wicks' value dips a little bit in that circumstance. So JSN's the play. Jesse, thank you. Choo Choo sends in a question, says, Brees and Marvin Harrison Jr. for my Henry. Standard scoring league. I want to know what the rest of your team looks like. But my initial thought is yes. But the standard scoring format makes it very difficult because, again, there is an inherent risk involved. If Marvin Harrison and Brees Hall will theoretically both start for your team, then yes, I'll take the deal. If they don't, if you're like, oh, well, I'll take the trade, but Marvin doesn't play. He sits on the bench. All right, well, then why do you need to make the trade, right? The only thing would be to improve your team overall. Alex sends in a question. Says, in a 10-man, 1 flex PPR, I'm at 4-1. My quarterback is Purdy. My wide receivers are Chase, Evans, Reed, Marvin Harrison, Ladd McConkey. My running backs are Pacheco, Kamara, Ramondre, Tank, Bigsby, along with Chubb. We have Fergie and Andrews, and he moves. Look, at this point, Purdy is maybe not the most reliable quarterback. I would probably try to see if you can hit up the waiver wire. Am I making a theoretical trade for a quarterback? I mean, again, the volume of times over the course of today's stream and yesterday's stream where we've heard people talking about getting out of Josh Allen and trading him away, I'd be willing to go and trade for him, honestly. Like, I'm in that position. But as for Chase, Evans, Reed, Marvin Harrison, you've got 4 incredible wide receivers. If you're playing in a 1 flex league and it's a 3 wide receiver league, then you're fine. If it's a 2 wide receiver league with 1 flex, then you have too many good wide receivers, and one of them could theoretically be sent away in order to improve running back. Because again, when I look at your running backs, I see Kamara, Ramondre, with Pacheco on IR, Chubb on, still injured, and Tank Bigsby not a full-fledged full starter at this point. You should probably take one of these 4 wide receivers, preferably either Reed, Evans, or Marvin Harrison, because we want to keep Chase, and send them off for a running back in exchange. You could even, be in the business of going after a Bijan. You take a Marvin Harrison and a potential Tank Bigsby and see what you can move. Otherwise, maybe, Evans. Depends on what they need. But at 4-1, you could also be in the business of trading for Achane. You could also be in the business of trading for Tyreek Hill for one of these wide receivers, because really you're in a great position right now based on record to be able to tank a loss or 2 and still be relevant, and then get the full-fledged power of an Achane, Waddle, Tyreek, and then just take it away. I mean, I'd even suggest guys like Pacheco and Nakua, not Pacheco. You have Pacheco, Nakua, and Kupp as guys that you could theoretically go after. But again, you don't need wide receiver. You need running back. So let's just focus on that Achane, Bijan, Brees, those are guys that you could theoretically go after. Otherwise, go after even higher tier guys like a Kyron, Gibbs, etc. Thank you. Hippo sends in a question. Says, full PPR. I got offered Roshan Johnson and Deebo Samuel for Pollard. Okay, if it depends on your running back depth purely. Like in a bubble, like I'm willing to take Deebo for Pollard. I think the value is very much so equivalent for the remainder of the season, in my opinion. Now, Roshan is just fodder. I don't care about Roshan. He should never start for you unless Swift is injured or something of that nature. But it's very much so dependent on what your running back depth looks like. If you're giving away Pollard and you don't have 3 other relevant backs that can rotate in for bye weeks for all those situations, it's kind of a sketchy approach. But if you're desperate for wide receiver, you have ample running back depth, then yeah, let's make the move. You don't even have to be desperate. This is just a move to improve your team, technically. Danny D sends in a question, says, looking to upgrade at wide receiver and running back, what suggested value can I get for Ingram/Pittman or Ingram/Rachaad White? Well, Pittman might go to the injured reserve. As of right now, like on Yahoo Fantasy, he has a doubtful designation. Now, as for Ingram, he hasn't played in the last couple weeks. So, unfortunately, his value is very much so reminiscent to what he was capable of accomplishing last season, which, again, many people may not be familiar with. So, maybe if you want to broach the conversation saying, hey, look, this is what Ingram was last year. He hasn't played thus far. He will get back to there. Then sure, you can try to sell it off of that, but I think it'd be easier to sell Ingram and Rachaad White rather than Ingram and Pittman, considering there is technically a rumor or a possibility that he ends up on the IR. No one wants to trade for an IR player, so, or at least one that is only now going into the IR because it's a 4-week minimum. Unless we're trading for Nico Collins. In that case, it's a different conversation. But as for Ingram, Rachaad White, what are we trading? I mean, if you're trying to get a wide receiver and running back for that, like at this point, Jacoby Myers, Najee Harris, Ladd McConkey, Najee Harris. Let's think about this. Buy low on Olave, Waddle, and a running back. You know what I mean? Like we'd have to go and kind of get wide receivers that haven't been relevant because there's no way someone's giving you Terry McLaurin for this, right? No one's giving you Flowers. The top tier, like top 24 players are not going to come off the board for that kind of compensation unless they're like super desperate in Ingram and need him and want him because they know his value. So again, it's very dependent on who you find, but otherwise, those are the kind of names as of right now. Thank you. Bob France sends in a question, says, pick 2 in a full PPR, Wicks, Bigsby, Sermon, Goodson, and Lockett. Listen, I think it's very much so dependent on the health of a lot of players this week. If Christian Watson's back, then, if Christian Watson's back, it changes the entire dynamic of Wicks. If Jonathan Taylor's back, it changes the entire upside of Sermon / Goodson. Bigsby is very much so, intertwined with the value and the health of ETN. Like, if you want, as of right now, you could play Lockett this upcoming Thursday, but then we'll figure out everything else once we get more information, which, again, we do not have available to us to make a 100% decision as to who we have to start out of the alternative option. So I'm okay just rolling with Lockett for now. If you want to take the risk and go to Sunday and maybe Jonathan Taylor plays, then you're pretty much forced to play Wicks and Bigsby regardless of the overall situation elsewhere. But yeah, for right now, I just play Lockett and wait for Sunday to figure out the rest. The S box says, what players could I reasonably get in trade involving Jerome Ford? I already have, okay, listen. In terms of giving Jerome Ford, typically somebody that wants to get Jerome Ford, I don't know if they're actually willing to send away a running back. But again, I'm going to keep saying it. I will take Najee Harris. I will take him. Now, as for what you already have Barkley, Aaron Jones, Eckler. So again, getting a running back in exchange theoretically isn't a necessity, but it would definitely give you a little bit more depth that you require. Giving away Ford, again, he hasn't been a great player. Chubb is soon to return. You'd be lucky to get Rico Dowdle. You'd be lucky to get, really at this point, looking across the board, I don't even actually, because the way that I value him in my mind is so different to where other people may look at him as. They may incorrectly increase his value just off of like recent performances or whatever, which aren't good anyway. But yeah, at this point, I'll just take Najee Harris if you can get him. I'll take Rachaad White if you can get him. Who's another name here? Let me just scroll down this list. Yeah, that's it. Really, unless you're trading for an injured Pacheco, like I mean, I guess you could try to do that. Try to go after Kareem Hunt. I doubt you get it after yesterday's Monday's performance. Other than that, like it's bare bones. Like there's nothing. You can try to trade him for Tyjae Spears. I mean, really, do we want Tyjae Spears? Not really. He's not even a weekly start. So, yeah, not a lot of value in my mind for Ford, nor do I believe anybody should be getting Ford on their team. So, if you're giving him away for a running back, not much of a market. Now, if you're going after a wide receiver, I mean, literally, I'll take Rome Odunze. Thank you. Moving on to Hector Hernandez's question, who says, is Kareem Hunt and Diggs a good trade for CMC? Do you have Mason? If you have Mason, I could justify it. But in a bubble, again, Kareem Hunt eventually disappears. If you trade away Kareem Hunt because you don't have Pacheco, that's fine. But giving away Diggs for Christian McCaffrey, again, if you have Mason and you're trying to recoup the value in the later half of the season, I guess it's fine. But ultimately, listen, anything that has to do with trading for Christian McCaffrey, it is always inherently going to be sketchy. So if you're willing to take the risk and you have a positive outlook on it and you're willing to understand that it could fuck up your whole season, then go for it. But I'm trying to prepare you for that disaster. Because if the time comes in beginning of November and they say he's going to miss another 4 weeks, right? You will have effectively given away 4 weeks of Kareem Hunt and Stephon Diggs for whatever is going to be in the future, which may not actually turn into anything. So the risk is very high. The reward is very high, assumably if he's full healthy. I don't even know if that's going to ever be a thing this season. But as of right now, if you're playing in a smaller league, 8 teams, 10 teams, I could justify it. But if you have Mason, if you don't want it. Top Dog sends in a question. Says, I'm currently 2-3. 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex league. Nico Higgins, Deontay, BTJ, JSN, Juju, along with running backs are Hall, Kenneth Walker, HN, Mason, Brooks. Got offered Hill for Hall. Accept it. Looking at your running back depth, I mean, look, what happens when Mason disappears? If he does. I mean, if he doesn't, you have Nico Higgins, Deontay, BTJ. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the deal, but again, you're going to have to trade wide receiver for perhaps potential running back depth in the future. Perhaps. Time will tell. But for right now, I'm okay with the deal. I'll take the Tyreek Hill side of that. Thank you. Giggs sends in a follow-up. Says, another trade. We have Jalen Hurts for Ramondre Stevenson. Nope, not interested in Ramondre. I have Jaden Daniels. Yeah, nope, still not interested. So I could give up Dobbins, Pickens, and Hurts for Ramondre and Mooney. What do you think? Yeah, I'm not in the business of trading for Ramondre Stevenson. That is the last running back that I would ever suggest anybody to trade for. Especially with the offense changing to a different quarterback. I don't know what we're going to potentially see. It may get worse, honestly. So, I mean, can it technically get worse? I don't know. I mean, honestly, the offensive line for that team is in shambles. Their center, their 10-year all-pro center is just gone. He's injured. He's out for the season. And in terms of pass blocking, they are the worst team in the league. So in terms of running the ball, if you're going to be in negative game scripts the whole time, it's never going to exist. They've had a good, couple opportunities here in competitive matchups early in the season. As we proceed going forward, people are going to abuse the rookie quarterback, and they're also going to make it so where they can't run the ball by stacking the box. So, I don't want to trade for Ramondre. Baba sends in a question. Baba Booey says, full PPR, Kupp, Sutton, and Moss, or Debo and Kelsey? I'd rather have Debo and Kelsey rest of the season. Yeah, that's the 2 that I prefer out of that, potential trade concept. Hector Hernandez has a follow-up, says, I have Braylon Allen. Should I go after Algier, Madison, or Roshan Johnson moving forward, or stay with Braylon Allen? Kareem is my RB2. Mason is my RB1. So you have Braylon Allen, but you don't have Breece Hall. As it currently stands, if I was to try to, if I'm gambling on the idea of okay, which one of these RBs do I want to have the backup for just in case anything happens? Right now, it's Madison. But that's only because Zamir White didn't practice yet earlier today, and there's a possibility that the offense could get a little bit of an uptick in their overall performance with the quarterback change. Just in the same way in which we saw, the offense went from Bryce Young in Carolina to Andy Dalton, uptick of an offensive, boost. If we're going to have an uptick because of the Aiden O'Connell change, Madison would be a benefactor of that. Otherwise, you just keep it as is, and you just hope that Braylon Allen is presented value once this team figures out how to run the ball, which again, they haven't been able to do for the last couple weeks here. Logan Williams sends in a question, says, Dynasty half PPR. I have Laporta, Garrett Wilson, and Kraft. Garrett Wilson and Kraft for a wide receiver upgrade like Jaden Reed to my team that needs a better tight end. To a team that needs a better tight end. I mean, look, in terms of... Okay. I'm fine with it. The only reason I can justify making a move of that capacity is because I know for a dynasty, like I know who the quarterback for Jaden Reed is going to be going forward. It's Jordan Love and it's set. As for Garrett Wilson, yeah, it's kind of a coin toss in that scenario, right? After the Aaron Rodgers era, however long that is, that could end this year. What is it going to be after that? Are they going to move quarterbacks if they don't make the playoffs? Are they going to go after a first round pick? What is their, what's the approach? I have no clue. So because of the uncertainty, I'm okay with the move. Let's see here. Chalateco09 says, traded Pollard and Jackson Smith and Jigba for Kelsey today. My wide receiver, running backs, and tight end depths are stacked. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll take any sort of tight end upgrade that we can make. Mike Doe sends in a question, says, in a 12-team flex, Pierce Odunze, Dobbs, Wicks, Myers. In the flex in a 12-team league, full PPR, yeah, I'll take Jacoby Myers every time. Jesus Chavez sends in a question, says, I'm 4-1, I lost Rice. Trade Hill for Debo/Chubb in a full PPR. I mean, at this point, I'd rather just keep Hill, to be honest. I think you're 4-1. You can afford to lose a couple games here, honestly. If you don't want to lose in a couple games, I get it. But, I mean, there's nothing that guarantees that you take it now, actually. But, yeah, if it's me, I'd probably keep Hill. I think he's got the greater value in comparison to Debo-Chubb combo rest of the season. Powerhouse says, Brian Thomas Jr. or Tank Dell rest of the season. I'd rather have Brian Thomas, and it's not even remotely close. Thank you. Fabian had sent in a question, nothing attached to it. Fabian, let me go to the live chat and see if you ended up typing anything. Fabian. Okay, you had sent in a follow-up question because nothing got attached. Got it. Okay, so let me just see what this question consists of. So Fabian says, Kamara, Gibbs, Pollard, start Bigsby over one of them? No, I would not start Bigsby over any of them. The only way that I theoretically consider that as a potential option is if, in fact, we got a confirmation that perhaps somehow, some way, ETN wouldn't play this week. Outside of that scenario, no, you play Kamara, Gibbs, and Pollard this week. Thank you. Inderjit sends in a question. Says, traded Swift and Tank for Achane. Okay, that's fine. If you're looking forward, that's perfectly fine. I don't have an issue with that. That's well done. Moving on to a question that came in from Alo, who says, I have Moore and Montgomery for Lamb and Charbonnet. I don't think so on that one. Charbonnet is fodder. He doesn't actually present any value. So you're trading away DJ Moore and Montgomery, who are two starters, for just Lamb. Which, again, David Montgomery is a top 8 running back, and DJ Moore has been significantly better since week 1. I have Connor and Achane and Hunt. I have Jefferson, Smitty, T. Higgins, BTJ, Puka, Mooney. Okay, look. Are you overpaying for Lamb? Abso-freaking-lutely. If you want to take the trade, you can, because, again, you have depth to be able to compensate for it. But if I'm in your position, I don't make this move. Like, I'd rather have Montgomery, Connor, Achane for the remainder of the season. Hunt is going to eventually disappear. If anything, you're trading Hunt away. And then at wide receiver, yes, you have Jefferson, Smitty, T. Higgins, BTJ, Puka. But, like, at this point, like, you're so stacked at wide receiver. I just try to get a deal done where you're not giving away Montgomery. Not in this circumstance, at least. Because, like, think about it this way. Montgomery, again, in a full PPR for the last 4 weeks that he's played, he's putting up 17 points per game. Like, unless Lamb's coming in and putting up 27 a game, like, this trade doesn't make sense to me. Because ultimately, you're just hurting your team with Achane's, Achane still is not going to be relevant for a while. And then on top of it, there's always the risk of Tua disappearing at any given moment, even if he returns. So yeah, I'm trying not to give away Montgomery in this deal. If you can find another way to do so, then sure. If not, I don't love it, but I can understand if you would, why you would take it. Moving on to Chris Kreider, who says, in a 10-team PPR, I dropped Downs for Tolbert. I have Lamb. I'm okay with having Tolbert, but yeah, considering the Michael Pittman Jr. injury news, we might want to go back and pick up Downs because for the remainder of the season, that's going to be their wide receiver one. Big Trips sends in a question, says, need to get rid of Mark Andrews or Juwan Johnson, okay, or Jennings, either one. Because AJ is off the IR. I got Wilson, Evans. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're going to drop Juwan Jennings. That's for sure. Thank you. Lenny V23 sends in a question. Says, full PPR, should I start Kenneth Walker or Debo? In a full PPR, I'd probably... Honestly, I'd probably play Debo. It's a little bit sketchier, but I think the full PPR format kind of justifies it. Ever so slightly. But if you were to play Kenneth Walker, I don't think it's a wrong answer. Again, you got two studs. You're just, kind of splitting hairs in this circumstance. John Warst is in a 10-team full PPR 3-2. Just traded Chuba Hubbard, Brooks, and Ayuk for Saquon. Okay, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Yep. I mean, I don't even have to look at the rest of your team's roster. I mean, looking at the roster, JJ, Marvin Harrison, T. Higgins, Juju. Yeah, I think it's perfectly fine. The fact that you get Saquon of all backs in return for what you gave in compensation, yeah, that's a win on your part. Thank you, John Moore. EK sends in a question after, of course, my YouTube maybe loads in. I don't know if it's going to break. No, I think it's fully broken, actually. EK, we're going to go to the live chat right now after it reloads because, again, I'm getting that live chat glitch. Hopefully I can find your question, EK. All right, EK says the following. Hurts, Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, Gibbs, Pollard, Najee Bigsby, Dalton Schultz, Puka, Judy, Tracy, half PPR, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 2 flex. Who's someone I should target for trades? I mean, looking at the entire team as a whole, right? Gibbs and Pollard and Najee don't really have to move. If anything, Bigsby is a movable option theoretically, but don't have to. Schultz sits there. Puka eventually comes back. You have Tracy just in case. You have Tank Dell. You have Devontae Smith. I mean, look, in your position, EK, like if you're going to trade someone in a 2 flex league, you're going to be trading like, I don't think you actually make a trade. Like I'm looking at this team, Devontae Smith, Tank Dell. You have to keep Tank Dell because your other wide receivers don't exist or aren't good enough to even potentially mention. You mentioned Judy, which again, you cannot start every week. So you have to play Devontae and Tank Dell until Puka Nacua returns. Once Puka Nacua returns, it would be Devontae Smith, Puka Nacua, but then you'd still play Dell within the potential flex position, or by the time we get like 2 weeks into the Nico Collins IR stint and Puka has returned, then you can maybe try to flip Dell and try to get more value out of him. But in terms of running back depth, Gibbs, Pollard, Najee, you keep all 3 of them because you got to play 2 running backs and 2 flex. I don't think you actually move anything. You're not in a position to move unless you're going to take Puka and trade him for 2 players or trade Jalen Hurts for a quarterback and a potential wide receiver or a running back. That would be the only thing. So you'd have to go out and see what teams in your league want to actually trade for Puka Nacua or actually want Jalen Hurts in exchange. But they'd have to be giving you a player like, a Baker Mayfield in return. You'd have to get a solid quarterback to be able to justify making that trade and then still also get a compensation of a running back or a wide receiver in order to give you more depth so that maybe you have more room to play with. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. We move on to the question that comes in from Juice Vino, who says, sup, Andrew, in a full PPR, Ridley or Rachaad White? As in this week for starts, I'd rather have Ridley right now. Am I playing the Eagles defense or the Texans? Thanks. I mean, look, I'd like to play the Texans defense against the rookie quarterback. That's what I'd like to do. Ultimately, I think that's the better play because it's his first start. But, if you want to play against Deshaun Watson, I don't blame you because, again, Deshaun Watson has been awful. Thank you. Moving on to a question that came in from Duro Modi. Follow-up says, trade my Jacobs and Brian Robinson. Sorry, trade my Jacobs for Brian Robinson and Waddle. Will Tua be back? I mean, look, the expectation is that he should return in week 8 after the bye week stint. Or not bye week, the IR stint. So, do I make this trade? My only concern is what is Brian Robinson Jr.'s injury? And how significant is it? He's dealing with a knee injury. Is this knee injury something that could get worse? If it is going to get worse to the extent to where he can miss time, I don't want to touch it. But if that is not going to be the case, I'd be willing to take this move because Waddle, with a return to assuming he comes back in week 8, potentially even week 9, if you can afford to not have, let's say, for example, you traded away Jacobs this week and Brian Robinson doesn't play and Waddle obviously is on a bye week. Then the week after, there is no Tua, so you still can't play Waddle and Brian Robinson misses another week due to injury. Do you have the ample required depth to be able to fill in for them? If you do, then yeah, you take the trade and you potentially benefit from it once in fact we have a healthy Brian Robinson at a full capacity and, of course, Waddle with Tua back. John Smith sends in a question, says Evans against Lattimore or Mooney. Yeah, that's why I was mentioning. If you have an alternative option that is just as good or, if not better, then you play him. And considering both Evans and Mooney are in the same tier, I have no issue at all playing Mooney over Evans. I think it probably is in your best benefit to do so, considering how great Mooney has played as of late, the Carolina matchup, and of course, Evans versus Lattimore is something that we never want to play. Just traded away Cooper and Ferguson for Kittle, by the way. Yep, sounds good to me. Thank you. Andrew Pacina sends in a question, says, I have Montgomery, Rico, Dobbins, Ramondre, Singletary. Okay. CD, DK Metcalf, Harrison Jr., Deontay, and Pittman. I'm 3-2. My quarterback is Jaden Daniels. King Henry is on the block, which makes no sense. Okay. Should I stand pat or trade for Henry? You should trade for Henry. They're going to want a running back in return. So great. We're going to give them one of these running backs. I'm going to assume that he's going to want Montgomery in return. That's fine. You can give him Montgomery. At that point, is he going to ask for like Marvin Harrison with it? If so, no thank you. We're going to keep what we have. But if he wants to take a lesser running back, like a Dobbins, and then he wants to take a Marvin Harrison, sure, we'll take the trade. But outside of those kind of scenarios, I'm not giving Montgomery with a stud wide receiver. I'd give Montgomery with, honestly, with Deontay. I'd do that. I don't have that much hope for Deontay rest of season in terms of the long-term value, because eventually I do believe that they'll go back to Bryce Young. I don't think they're committed to the Andy Dalton train because they're just going to keep losing games anyway. So as of right now, if something of that exchange can be kind of wagered and potentially brokered with this other guy that has King Henry, why not? Awesome person says, hi, Andrew. I left a question in the chat. Cheers. Yep. Let me check it out. Awesome person. Full PPR, 14-team league. I'm 4-1 right now. Someone put Bijan on the trade block. Okay, very well. What is a good trade I can make, or should I stay put? I have Kirk, as in Kirk Cousins, I'm assuming, Purdy, Hall, Chuba, Achane, Hunt, Chase, Brown, very well. London, Debo, Mooney. Okay, cool. So if I was in your position, legitimately, I would offer him Chuba Hubbard, and I would offer him Mooney. And there's no way they say no. That's what I would do. Because I'd like to just secure the deal. Because when I look at your wide receivers, you have London and Debo. I don't like the idea of rest of season starting two Atlanta wide receivers. And I'd like to cash in on Mooney after this massive performance. Now, as to whether or not you give away Chuba or Hunt, that is up to you. That is your prerogative. But that's what I would offer. Because I think getting Bijan now is the cheapest you'll ever get him. And quite frankly, I think this is a pretty good trade to where they do not say no. I don't want to give away Chase Brown. I don't want to give away Achane. I don't want to give Breece Hall away. Unless they're going to take Breece Hall 1-for-1, then sure. Or they'll take Breece Hall and Christian Kirk maybe in that circumstance, sure. But ultimately, I'd rather give a running back that is on a ticking time bomb, whether it's Chuba or Hunt, because again, the return of Jonathan Brooks, the return of Pacheco, and then along with one of your stud wide receivers, which again, I'm perfectly fine giving away Mooney, because again, coming off of probably the best week you'll have all season. Thank you. Moving on to a question that comes in from John. John Daughtry says, in a full PPR, start Montgomery or Chuba Hubbard. Thoughts about Gibbs getting more touches and taking away from Montgomery going forward? Seems like it's going that way. I mean, look, here's the thing. Until it actually happens, I agree with you. They're going to give Gibbs more touches. But Montgomery's not going anywhere. He has been far too efficient in far too much of this offense in terms of the way that they want to establish early downs, and early in the game they want to run the ball down the opponent's throat. He's not going to go anywhere. Montgomery's still going to be double-digit touches, always implicated for a rushing touchdown. Again, he has scored a rushing touchdown every single week in the last 4 games. And additionally, has scored, what was the stat from Tuesday? I think it's 19 touchdowns in the last 20 games that he has played for the Detroit Lions. And the guy's not going anywhere. So as for this week, who am I starting? Again, the running back rankings video was put out. You're good to go with approaching it as such. I probably have Chuba Hubbard, ranked higher because of the PPR upside and that format. But ultimately, they're both great plays. You and I both know that. Common Sense sends in a question, says in a 12-man PPR, I started 0-3, so I made some trades. My team is Love, Fields, Hall, Jacobs, Rashad, Charbonnet, Tracy, Ferguson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Adams, Pickens, Wicks. Any suggested improvements? I mean, look, your wide receivers are set. Once Adams figures it out, I don't even know where Adams is going, to be honest. I would like to assume he goes to the Jets, but again, because of there's not really any other team stepping forward as a potential trade option to send, Adams to them. And probably teams really thinking, the Raiders are desperate. Like if the player's coming out and saying that he doesn't want to play there, then that makes the organization kind of vulnerable to being, screwed over in a trade. Like they'll get less compensation because of their desperate nature of trying to get rid of him as quickly as possible. So considering all that, if Adams stays, I mean, even if he stays, it doesn't matter. If he goes, stays, whatever. Your wide receivers are set. Your tight end is set. You've got 2 solid running backs. Your quarterbacks are good. Do I need to make an upgrade? Technically, no. If you want, you could technically take Adams and move him. If someone in your league theoretically has, an inside scoop and they think, oh, he's going to the Jets for sure, I'd like to get the value of that. Sure, you can go ahead and trade him for a wide receiver. But otherwise, I look at this team and I don't think to myself, yeah, we need to make moves to trade. I think we just wait it out because Hall will improve over time. Your quarterbacks are set. Jacobs is solid. Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb, Adams, Pickens, like Ferguson. Yeah, there's not really if you were going to make upgrades, you'd have to do 2-for-1s and you may be having to give a lot. Like you'd have to give Adams and Rachaad White for a barely better wide receiver, theoretically. Airbender sends in a question, says, PPR, I'm 1-4. Nico Collins just got hurt. Should I trade him? Yes. Considering you're 1-4, you cannot afford to keep him on roster. You need to trade him. You should trade him for a top-tier wide receiver. I don't care that he's out for the next 4 weeks. I would like to get back a wide receiver in return like Drake London, legitimately. It's going to be difficult to do that. You're going to have to find the right team that has a wide receiver like a Malik Neighbors, a Drake London, top-tier players, legitimate, like A.J. Browns, all those. Those are who he is valued at. I mean, again, you got to remember, prior to getting injured, this guy is, what is he, the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy? Let's find this out. Let's see here. Outside of Jamar Chase, who's coming off of a 40-point week, he was the number 1 wide receiver. He's only behind Chase by 2 points. The guy's averaging 21.3 in a full PPR. So I'd like to trade him away for a top-tier receiver if I can get one. If that top-tier receiver looks like CeeDee Lamb, beautiful. If it doesn't, and the best offer you can get in return is someone like, I don't know, if I'm throwing out names just for the example purposes, if the best names you can get back in return are like Marvin Harrison's or, I don't know, let's see here. Marvin Harrison's, Devontae Smith's, Chris Godwin's, Cooper Kupp's, Jaden Reed's. If that's like the most you can get out of him, then you have to take it. You got to go find one of those second-tier guys and just try to go after him. Because, again, you cannot afford to not have him for the next 4 weeks. Okay? Thank you. And then your follow-up question is, my quarterback is Daniels, running backs are Robinson Jr. and Javonte Williams, wide receivers are Ayuk, Pickens, Pittman, Tolbert. I mean, honestly, maybe you just trade him for a running back. You could also do that because your running back position looks hella thin, especially with the injury to Brian Robinson Jr. Like that's not very comfortable. You might also be in the business of potentially trading for a running back in this circumstance, actually, to the extent to where you're going and knocking on Tony Pollard's door right now. Thank you. Matthew sends in a question, says Chase Brown or Rico Dowdle rest of the season? Full PPR? Yeah, I'd rather have Chase Brown. I think that the offense is built for Chase Brown to succeed, whether it's on the ground, through the air. Rico Dowdle does not get enough exposure to opportunity in the receiving game for me to feel comfortable with that. Now, it could expand as the season progresses, but they use that fullback / tight end a lot in that backfield. So even though Chase Brown has the immediate competition of Zach Moss, which is a more imposing threat than what Rico Dowdle deals with, I think even with the threat, Chase Brown has significantly outplayed him in terms of efficiency, and considering the injury situation, the Wally Pip is about to happen. Moving on to Andrew Pacino, who sends in a follow-up. It says, I snagged Hawkinson off of the waiver. I traded him for Baker. I have Mahomes in a full PPR. Did I mess up? I don't know if you theoretically messed up. You have Ferguson, so that's fine. Again, you picked him up off the waiver. Cool. You got a top-tier quarterback that hopefully can kind of sustain his value rest of the season. Again, as of thus far this season, in terms of quarterback value, on a per-game average, Baker Mayfield is the QB3 overall. So I don't see that as an issue. Even if he regresses in the upcoming games, he's still going to be a top 10 quarterback rest of the season. I don't have an issue with that. Lenny V23 says team is Kyler, Henry, Montgomery, Amon-Ra, London, Ferguson, Kenneth Walker, Sam Darnold, Leggett, Debo, Deontay Johnson, Shaheed. Should I trade for anyone? I mean, looking at this team as a whole, right? Henry, Montgomery don't need to move. Neither does Amon-Ra, London. Neither does Ferguson. Neither does Kenneth Walker. So it's a matter of like, oh, and you have Debo as well. So really, Deontay Johnson, Shaheed on your bench, those are your two most valuable trade proposition pieces to where you could theoretically go and try to get a better wide receiver. You could send two of them to one team to try to get a wide receiver in return. Now, as for what you go for, obviously it's dependent on what team just lost Nico Collins. You could be investing in a Nico Collins for the future. You could be investing in a Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Achane, those kind of players, Puka, Kupp, all those kind of guys. That's who I'd go after. That's my suggestion, Lenny. Let's see here. Duramodi sends in a follow-up, says Puka or Adams rest of season, assuming Adams lands in a good spot. If Adams lands in a good spot, even with that being the case, let's say he ends up with the Jets, okay? Would I rather have Adams on the Jets or Puka Nacua? Now, if you told me that Puka Nacua is going to be fully healthy, I'll tell you that I'd rather have Puka in this Rams offense rest of season. But if you told me that there's a chance that Andrew, he could also re-aggravate the knee injury and then disappear for another 4 weeks, then at that point we pivot to Adams. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to predict what Puka's potential re-injury rate could end up being, but that's how I'd kind of present it as. I'd rather have Puka if he's fully healthy, regardless of where, Adams ends up. Vino Chino sends in a question. Says, trade Christian Watson, Braylon Allen, Michael Pittman Jr., Chase Brown, and Kyle Pitts for Brock Bowers, Devontae Adams, and Chubb. Yes, I'll take the Brock Bowers and Adams side. Thank you. Like by a pretty far margin as well. Christian Miller sends in a question, says, hey, brother, I have a few questions in the chat. Okay, we'll check that in a second. So Christian Miller and Chris Kreider had both sent questions in the chat. So let's find Chris Kreider first. Control F, Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider says, Ridley or Tolbert this week? I have Lamb. Yeah. And could pick up Downs. Thanks, bud. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the idea of playing Ridley this week and then picking up Downs and dropping Tolbert. Now, if you can potentially drop somebody else in order to pick up Downs, and that works too, because Tolbert's still going to have value in the absence of Cooks. But if you can't, again, Tolbert, I don't see that being as impactful as Downs with a potential IR stint for Michael Pittman. Christian Miller had also sent in a question. Let's find that right now. Christian, can you do me a favor? Type it in the live chat, because honestly, by the time you had typed it, the chat is, it's updated to the extent to where I don't even see messages from you in the live chat except for the super. So do me a favor and copy paste your messages and or just retype them in the live chat. Thank you, appreciate it. All right, for those of you who are joining us today, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. My Dodgers are up 5-0. We have Shohei Ohtani at the plate. Swings, hits, and it's a foul ball. All right, continuing on. We had a question that came in from Football is Life. Says second super chat. Posted questions, response for the first question. Oh, okay, my bad. Football is Life. I remember you had asked me a question in regards to, your team, and then I had said, type your, that's my bad. I totally forgot. My bad. Let me go see if I can find it real quick. Football is Life. Says, I could do Evans and Kenneth Walker for Jones and Nico, but seems tough with Nico injury. Yeah, that is I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. I think you're taking you're taking a really sharp 4 games that could end up being losses that at that point could just derail your whole season. Football is Life. Do me a favor and type your full roster into the chat. I will remember. I'm not leaving the live chat. I'm going to stick right here until you do it. There's a little bit of a delay on the live stream, but I'm literally sitting here and waiting. Until then, let me answer some of the live chat questions that are in here. What's up, guys? Miles Reed Morgan says, Garrett Wilson, Metcalf, Hubbard, James Cook, Connor in the flex for PPR. You've got too many good options, Miles. You really do at this point. In a PPR, like it's probably just like, man, dude, like this is, oh, geez, Louise. I don't want to play Hubbard, to be honest, Miles. Blue Jacket says, 2 weeks ago, I had a healthy Rashi Rice, Nico Collins, and Jonathan Taylor. Yep. Join the club, brother. It's a disaster. Jackie Johnson says, Harrison Jr. or Hubbard in the flex. Honestly, I'd rather play Hubbard. Again, it is too difficult not to play him. He's played far too well, and the offense continues to just roll through him. Downs toe injury, is that a legit thing? I have not seen or heard of that yet. Did they walk Otani just right now? They're loading up the bases. Who's up on? Is it Mookie next? I mean, we're about to just clean this team out. Quaid says, should I trade Debo for Tyreek Hill in a full PPR on 4-1 and have good wide receiver depth? Yes. In that case, I'd be willing to take the risk. This being said, though, understand that if you do this trade and Tua doesn't return, that is the risk you've bought into. If Tua comes back, whiplash, season's over, retires. Just understand that's the risk that you've bought into. As long as you understand the full extent, then I'm cool with it. Football's Life says I have Allen, Amon-Ra, Evans, Adams, Marvin Harrison, Waddle, Downs. Okay, so you've got a lot. Kenneth Walker, Mason Pollard, Rico Bowers, Christian McCaffrey's on the IR. Okay, so now I'm understanding as to what the heck is going on with your team. So with all of this context, let me just do myself a favor. I'm going to copy this and move it into a notepad so I can actually... I'm also looking for Christian Miller's question. I can also maybe find that and dump it into a notepad. Okay, we're still waiting for Christian Miller. Either way. So, with the context of your team now in a full capacity, Football is Life, am I willing to make this trade? Looking at your running backs, you have Kenneth Walker, Mason, Pollard. Okay, so Rico's irrelevant. He's trade fodder. Boom. And then you have Evans, Amon-Ra, Adams, Marvin Harrison, Waddle down. So you give away Evans, you replace... Yeah, I'm okay with the trade. If you make that trade, I don't have an issue with it. The original one, I don't have an issue with it. But as for the second one that you were mentioning, Evans and Kenneth Walker, I wouldn't do that one. Thank you. All right, scrolling back down into the chat. After Football is Life, we had Justo11. Thank you very much. It says, I have Montgomery, Tony Pollard, Drake, I'm assuming London, Alec Pierce, Gesicki, Jennings, Justice Hill, Kelsey, Kupp, Pittman, Sermon, and Christian McCaffrey. I have Joey B at quarterback. I'm currently 4-1. What should I do in terms of long-term success? I mean, look, in terms of long-term success, Montgomery, Tony Pollard, Drake London, Kelsey, Kupp are the long-term success players, right? So theoretically, you could utilize one of them in order to make an upgrade. Like, I wouldn't mind taking Montgomery right now and trading for Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall. I don't mind that. Like, I'm happy to make an upgrade of that capacity if someone wants to oblige me. But unless you're making an upgrade at one of those specific positions, moving Tony Pollard and getting a Josh Jacobs back, or moving Pollard and getting back a Kenneth Walker, unless you're going to actually make a legitimate upgrade of running back, you don't move those players. Drake London's there to stay. Kelsey's there to stay. Kupp will be back by next week and you'll be good to go. And at that point, you have Alec Pierce, who has an increase of value based on, of course, the injuries to the Indianapolis Colts receiving core. You don't need Gesicki. You don't need Jawan Jennings. Pittman is injured. Sermon is really just a, fill-in until otherwise noted. And Christian McCaffrey's the long-term value. Like, really, that's the only thing that I can see, is if you want to individually within position move upward. Take Drake London, trade for, really at this point, I don't actually know. I think he's probably top 7 at wide receiver. So you could theoretically trade him for Lamb. You could. Amon-Ra, trade him up. You could do one of those. But if you believe in Drake London for the remainder of the season, just keep it as is. There's no reason to have to move. Because the team, as its core base pillars, Montgomery, Pollard, Drake, Kelsey, Kupp, is really strong with Burrow. So really, it's just a matter of hitting the waiver wire, picking up players as we continue, and just hoping you stay healthy, because that's it. Otherwise, you make little upgrades of sorts. Let's see here. Did Christian Miller end up typing in the live chat? Hopefully he did. Let's see here. Nothing from Christian Miller. Okay. Very well. We'll come back. We'll see if he's back in the live stream a little bit later on. Guerra says, I'm worried about my wide receivers. I have Mike Evans, Jaden Reed, McLaurin, Wan'Dale Robinson. Should I make any moves? If so, my question is, why are you concerned? Or why are you worried? Again, you got Jaden Reed, who I believe is a low-end wide receiver 1 rest of season. Same thing with Mike Evans, low-end wide receiver 1. Terry McLaurin has played as a low-end wide receiver 1. And Wan'Dale Robinson has played far beyond his overall means based on how the season has progressed. He is, again, top 4 in overall wide receiver targets. Terry McLaurin, 3 consecutive weeks of being highly utilized and averaging nearly 15 points per game in a half PPR. Evans, this week, not a great overall matchup. But ultimately, that doesn't matter. For rest of season value, these guys are great wide receivers. I don't see any problem with it. If you want to potentially trade around and try to make upgrades, you can try. If you have a really good record, you can maybe take Terry McLaurin and trade him for Tyreek Hill right now. I don't mind that. But Otherwise, I don't think you really need to make any moves. That's just from my perspective as to what context I have as of right now. Donovan sends in a question. Says in a full PPR, package Jaden Reed and either Wicks/Higgins for AJ Brown. Yeah, I'd be willing to give Jaden Reed and Wicks for AJ Brown. I would not give Reed and Higgins for AJ Brown. That would be giving up far too much. I'd rather have both those guys on my roster contributing. As for the rest of the context of your team, you have Chase, Reed, Higgins, and Wicks as your wide receivers. Yeah, that's fine. I would give away Wicks and Jaden Reed, both Packers, in order to get AJ Brown. If I can get that in return, I'd be more than happy. Really, Wicks is just fodder to me. It's a Jaden Reed for AJ Brown trade, straight up. So that's how I see it. Thank you. Also, Mason and McCaffrey for Saquon. I would be willing to give Mason and McCaffrey also for Saquon. That'd be great. Yeah, I have no issue with that. That's actually preferred if you can get away with it. Thank you. Low-key Dusty says, should I trade Dell and Worthy for Jordan Mason? If you have Christian McCaffrey and you need to try to get Mason on roster just in case, then sure. Otherwise, I mean, again, Dell is going to get himself an uptick of production in the next couple weeks here to where you may be able to sell him for even more. Again, if you don't have McCaffrey and you're trading for Mason, it doesn't make any sense. So I'd assume you have him, and I'm okay with it. 11, De Villalobos says, 3-2, 10-team PPR. We have the Hill owner at 0-5. Should I trade Adams for him? Yes. Objectively, yes. If he will take Adams, then absolutely you make the deal. Absolutely. If also they're interested in taking like depth in order to fill in because Tyreek's on a bye, like if you can give JSN, I don't know, let me think about this. No, you don't have enough depth to be throwing away running backs. No. I'm okay with it. If you can get away with it, Lobos, then yes, you do it. BFresh512 says, in a 10-team PPR, my quarterback is Justin Fields, and my running backs are Achane, Bijan, Taylor, and Mason. Okay, is it worth to trade one for Jaden Daniels? He won't take Mason. So you're asking if I would trade away Achane, Bijan, or Taylor and Jaden Daniels, and I would say no, I wouldn't do that deal. I'd keep those three running backs. I just keep them. I don't want to trade for a quarterback of that caliber. Like, even if I was getting the best quarterback in the league, like Jaden Daniels, theoretically, let's see here. What has he done thus far? In terms of point per game averages, 22.7. And he's played relatively well, right? 22.7 times a nice 17-game season. 385. Actually, it's not half bad. But, wait, that's not a 17-game season. It's actually a 16-game season. 22.7 times 16. 360. Okay. In terms of value, it can be justified, but I wouldn't take it because of the running backs that you are specifically putting out there. Taylor, Achane, and Bijan are just too valuable. Once Bijan really gets the jump start this week, Taylor's healthy, and Achane gets Tua back. If you had told me like you had Christian McCaffrey as well, tied up with Mason, I'd say fine, we can give away Achane. But that would be it. Thank you. Jason Rodriguez says, PPR, Geno, Amon-Ra, Dell, J.K. Dobbins, Madison, Leggett, Achane, Mostert, Wright, Waddle, Juju, Cup. I just traded Bijan and J-Mo for Amon-Ra and Achane. Yep, I have no issue with that. Well done. Picked up, cool, perfect. Who do you drop now? For a kicker, I'm assuming, right? At this point of the available that you theoretically have, it would be a Jalen Wright drop. That's what it would be. Because again, Jalen Wright only presented as much value as he did last week because of Achane's concussion. Thank you. Mo Money sends in a question. It says, trade Baker, Mason, Deontay for Cook and Adams. Baker, Mason, Deontay. If you don't have Christian McCaffrey, I'm okay with the deal. Perfectly fine with it. I'm actually really happy if you can make that. Thank you. Chris Kreider says, final question below. Thank you. All right, so let's go. Let's see if Christian Miller sent in anything. Christian Miller did say, choose 2 running backs this week. Bijan, Brian Robinson, Bigsby, Rico, Alexander Madison, Justice Hill, Bucky Irving. Cool. So of the available, Bijan has to play. He's a top 3 option within the week. If, in fact, we get a confirmation that, for sure, Brian Robinson Jr. is healthy, practices by Friday, he's going to be at a full capacity going into the game against the Baltimore Ravens, I'd say, yes, you have to play him. He's played far too well this season, and he is the goal line red zone rushing threat, right? So those would be the 2. Now, if in fact Brian Robinson does not play this week, then at that point, it's really a conversation of what is ETN's health? How does it look? Is he going to play? If he does, then you would pivot to playing Rico. Otherwise, you'd play Bigsby. Thank you. All right, let's go and see. Okay, so Chris Kreider has said, okay, I have Kyron, Montgomery, Connor, and Hubbard. Safe to drop my stashed Braylon Allen and scoop Downs or Ridley? Yes, I'd be willing to drop Braylon Allen and pick up either of the two. What about Shakir as a potential pickup or a drop? Which one are you referring to, Chris? Because honestly, I think Ridley is the one that I'd prioritize picking up, especially with the Indianapolis Colts matchup. Like, I'm only picking up Ridley, by the way, to then trade him next week. I'm only playing him to trade him next week. I don't think Ridley is like, I don't know if I can trust him every single week with the overall integration of whether it's Mason Rudolph or Levis. So this is like a 1 week deal because they play Indianapolis. Like even last year, week 1, Calvin Ridley against Indianapolis went for 24 fantasy points. Like there's been success against that team. So he's very familiar. He could have himself a solid week. He should have himself a big game. Ryan Lee sends in a question, says in a 12-team PPR, one flex. Okay, actually, by the way, before I even get to Ryan Lee, there's somebody. Okay, we took a Chris Kreider, Christian Miller. Okay. Is there anything else? Bears or Eagles defense just for this week? I'd rather play the Eagles. Thank you. Okay, so then Ryan Lee's question is 12-team PPR. My record is 1-4. It's a one flex league. We have Purdy, Taylor, Kyron, Reed, Moore, Ferguson, Higgins. Bench is Chandler, Eckler, Dak, Sermon, JSN, Mason, Shakir. Any tips? Look, so as it currently stands, right? Quarterback play, not great. Running back situation. Okay, so you are 1-4, and you have either injuries or bye week hell. Man, that sucks. Okay, so this is the way that you could go about it. Okay, this is a theoretical potential approach that you could inherit if you would like to. You could trade Kyron Williams this week in order to go get a top-tier running back. As for who we are going after, again, unless you are legitimately getting back one of the top running backs, a la Saquon, Kamara, Henry, Gibbs, maybe Bijan, could be argued. Unless you get back one of those players, don't want it. Keep it. I'd rather it die on my team. But you could theoretically trade him right now in order to ensure that you have a starting running back this week that can lead to your victory. Because if you drop to 1-5, it hurts. Now, you're in a 12-team league. If you were to tell me, Andrew, 12-team league, only 6 teams make the playoffs, I'd say, okay, so you need 8 wins minimum, if not more, to make the playoffs. So henceforth, in the next, week 6 through 14, what is that? Is that 9 games? You're going to need to win 7 of them. Wait, is that right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, that's 9 games. And if you need 8 wins, you're going to win 7 of the next 9. That's what you need to do. So, with that being put into perspective, yeah, you probably need to move Kyron, go get a top-tier running back in exchange, play him this week. If Taylor doesn't play, at least you have Sermon as a potential backup. Reed, Moore, Ferguson are chilling. I don't have an issue with that. I'm okay playing Purdy on Thursday. I think it's a pretty solid matchup against that secondary. Higgins is great, but that's it. That is the only difference maker. It would be taking Kyron to move him only to give you help to win. Wait, you have Mason too. What am I talking about? You don't even need to move him. You don't need to move him. Why did you put Mason on the bottom? Why is Mason the last name on this list, Ryan? You made me go through this whole explanation, and now I'm looking at the team. That's my bad, honestly. All right, yeah, you don't need to make any moves. Just keep it as is. You got a pretty strong roster. I know you're 1-4, but I think it's actually it's a pretty good looking team. Reed, Moore, Higgins, Taylor, Kyron, Mason, Ferguson. Yeah, that's fine. Again, I don't think you could do that. You could approach that method, but considering you have Mason Taylor potentially this week, I don't think that's an issue. Ace007 says, just traded Jonathan Taylor and Kraft for Breece Hall and Zay Flowers. How did I do? I think that's a great trade. Again, Kraft is trade fodder. You picked him up off of waivers and you cashed in on 2 players, and I think Breece could be of similar value to Taylor rest of the season. Needed a wide receiver. Nico and Rice is on the IR. Yeah, that's cool. I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, I mean, going back to your question, Ryan Lee, your team looks good, bro. I don't think you need to make a move. I'm over here like spazzing out thinking you needed to actually make a move. You're good. Corey Miller says, I'm 4-1. First place in my league. Do I play Goff or Geno? I'd rather play Goff. I have Jones on a bye week. Do I start Bucky or Braylon? I'd rather play Bucky this week. Or wait and see if Cook misses and play Davis. Cook's not going to miss. Thank you. Or I hope not. Brian Miller says, Brian Thomas or Olave. I mean, the words that I heard come out of Spencer Rattler's mouth about an hour ago was that He's going to be funnel targeting Olave this week. He says anytime I'm in the game and he's on the field, I'm going to try to get the ball in his hands. We'll see about that. But for right now, I'm going to just lean in the direction of Brian Thomas. Thank you. Jberg1993 says, I sent the question in the chat. Let me check where it's at. Berg says, I'm in a 12-man league. Currently 1-4. My team consists of CJ Stroud, St. Brown, Devontae Smith, Rashad White, Javonte Williams, Ferguson, Shaheed, Bills defense, any bench. Okay, my bench is Kirk, Irving, Algier, Bigsby, and Pacheco. Okay, so you're in a really tough spot here. I mean, honestly, across the board, running backs are really weak. Don't really have any trade power, at least. Like Rashad White and Javonte Williams are not going to garner trade value, in my opinion. Ferguson might. But honestly, you would want to keep him because what he provides to your team. You're in a really, really, really tough position considering like Kirk has Evan Ingram coming back, which is going to hurt inherently Christian Kirk's upside. Irving is not really a startable option. I mean, you could theoretically flex him this week because of the matchup, but again, we don't love it. Algier, Bigsby, Pacheco. I mean, look, yeah, you're in a tough spot. Honestly, if I was in your spot, Jay Berg, I take Stroud and I trade him away for a running back or a wide receiver to play in the flex. And then I'm going and picking up Daniel Jones. That's legitimately what I would do. That's the only way I know how to improve this team. Otherwise, I keep it as is. Okay, scrolling down. Man, I am sweating. It is an absolute sauna in this room. It's okay. I'm getting a workout basically answering questions. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in from Eugene Lee, who says, in a 12-team full PPR, I have one flex. Okay, one flex league. We have Allen, we have Hall, we have Achane. Okay. Allen, Hall, Achane, Garrett Wilson, Deontay Johnson, McBride, JMO, Texans defense, Koo is my kicker. We're 3-2. How's the team looking in terms of long-term? I mean, look, Josh Allen will improve. So will, Breece Hall, Achane, I like for the long term. Garrett Wilson, we'll see whether or not, Devontae Adams ends up there. Deontay Johnson, I think, needs to be traded. Jamison Williams is far too sketchy, in my opinion, as well. If I was in your position, I'd be taking Jamison Williams and Deontay Johnson, and I'd be trading for a wide receiver that is... I'd legit try to go get DK Metcalf. I don't think you'd be able to, but I'd try it. I'm just trying to get out of those two players. I don't really think that they have long-term potential upside value in this circumstance. So that's the way that I'd go in. As for the rest of your team, there's not really a context as to the bench or depth or all that kind of jazz. But in terms of what it currently sits at, that's the way that I'd approach it. Thank you, Eugene. Young Money says Shaheed with no car or Evans against Lattimore. As of right now, I have it as Evans, but I could be convinced otherwise. Again, I don't know what Rattler's capable of. That's the issue. Jorge Perez says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, is it time to drop Andrews? If so, Conklin, Otten, Hill, Komet, Fant, Gesicki are available. I mean, if you're going to drop him, you drop him for Conklin because Conklin just sees consistent targets every week. Thank you. Dylan Matos says, Josh and ETN, as in Josh Allen, right? Not Josh Jacobs. For Dak and Brian Robinson. Got it. Okay. As of right now, I'd rather have the Josh Allen and ETN side of that deal. I know you're worried about ETN, but I do not think that moving from Josh Allen to Dak is really beneficial. Peyton Whitaker says, why is someone thinking given Zay/Juan for Amon-Ra St. Brown is good? Why is someone thinking giving Zay Flowers and Wan'Dale Robinson for Amon-Ra St. Brown is good? Why does someone think that's good? I have no clue. I don't know. Good question. Jason Rodriguez says, I forgot I have Whittington too. Would you drop him over Wright? Yes, I would drop him because, again, starting next week, Kupp is back and nobody else is going to get targets. Also, should I drop Madison for Vidal after this week? I mean, Vidal's going to be in the rotation, mainly because Gus Edwards is injured. But outside of that, I mean, honestly, I think I'd just keep Madison. I think he may end up just being the outright one of that offense, considering Zamir White has not played well at all this season. Moving on to Tan Fam, who sends in a question, says, I am 1-4 in a 12-man half PPR league. Okay, should I try to trade Kyron plus Jamison Williams for Bijan Robinson and Scary Terry? Yes. Please and thank you. Sounds good to me. Carlos Bruno says, trade Murray, Pollard, and DJ Moore for Kupp and Henry. Murray, Okay, Murray is trade fodder. If you have another comparable, like if you have a legit like Jaden Daniels on your team, or you have, I don't know, Burrow, Lamar, if you have a stud quarterback on your team and you're just giving away Murray because you have another stud, I don't even see them a part of this trade. Yes, I will take the Cup and Henry side of that. That's not a problem at all. Thank you. Okay, so usually what we like to do here on the channel is live stream every day for about, at least at night, for about hour to an hour and a half. We're about an hour 20 in. I do appreciate y'all coming through. Again, this is going to be like the final, I guess, stretch of questions. I see questions that are on the screen. I'm going to pause the screen. I'm going to screenshot it. And these are the questions I'm going to rip through right now really quickly. And then I'm going to end it. I got to go catch the end of this Dodgers game to make sure my boys win and bring it back home for game 5. Thank you, everybody, for coming through. Tomorrow, we will have our quarterback and tight end rankings video available. Alongside of that, of course, we will be live streaming tomorrow night after the game. Again, if you guys haven't checked out Underdog, at the end of tomorrow's video, I will be including a couple pick'em slips that you guys want to potentially follow. You can. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Again, if you guys are trying to get my rankings every single Sunday morning, Underdog is the way to do it. All you got to do is sign up using code Andrew, make one first-time deposit, minimum of $10, and I'll send you those rankings, my email to yours every single Sunday morning, so you know what to do and what lineups to set, etc. like that. Otherwise, you can check out the Patreon. All of that is available in terms of rankings, questions, etc. Thank you. All right. Tramiris says ETN and Bigsby for Mason. I have Bijan, Rico, Dowdle, Najee. Don't have Christian McCaffrey. If you don't have Christian McCaffrey, I don't want to take the trade. Chicano says in a question, says Tank Bigsby, Rashad White, Spears, Tolbert, Tucker for the flex this week. Okay, so we have a bunch of potential options there. Of the available, if it's a full PPR, I'd probably end up playing Tolbert there. If it's a half PPR, I'd consider probably playing Rashad White. Moving on to John Silver, says, hey, Andrew, got offered Jalen Hurts, Barkley, and Flowers for Mahomes, Kyron, and BTJ. Any advice? Got offered Hurts and Barkley, Flowers, Mahomes, and Kyron. I mean, Mahomes is not even a top 16 quarterback. He's not a effective quarterback. Jalen Hurts provides a lot. So the way that I see this, like, unless, dude, look, here's the issue. Yeah, as a whole, I think I'd rather just have Barkley, Flowers, and Hurts. That's just what it's not even close in my mind. That's just clear and away which side I'd rather have. Barkley, Hurts, and Flowers. Thank you, John. Forsaken V12 says, hey, Andrew, and a half PPR, JJ, Pittman, Mooney. Just picked up Tolbert, dropped Sutton. Okay, that's fine. What should I do to make my wide receiver squad better? I mean, JJ, Pittman, Mooney, trade Pittman. Otherwise, you drop him onto the IR later this week once he's designated out, and then you just go pick back up Sutton. Let's see here. Abanto says, my Hunt, Jacobs for Achane, Olave. I'd rather, well, if you can afford to not have a running back of the caliber of Achane for the next couple weeks, because we still don't have the return of, like, you're basically just taking a huge discount, Abanto. You basically be saying, like, I'm okay taking L's the next 2 weeks making this trade. If you are, then yeah, let's make the move. Green Screen Man says, in a 10-team full PPR, I'm 3-2. Quarterback is Jalen Hurts, Love, Kyron, Mason, Dobbins, K9, Hunt, Pacheco. Okay. I'm worried about my wide receiver room since Nico's on the IR. You have CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson, J-Mo. Yeah, I could see why you could be worried. I mean, you could theoretically trade Nico Collins. You could. If you want, trade him away for Tyreek Hill. You could. I mean, again, if you can get somebody better that's active, then beautiful. But otherwise, I don't think you're in a bad position holding. Deontay Johnson and J-Mo for McLaurin probably get done. Yeah, I probably would. Frenzy 40K says, in a full PPR, I need one running back due to my bye week. Alexander Madison, Tank Bigsby, Trey Sermon, or Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb's probably not going to play. Trey Sermon is very dependent on whether or not Jonathan Taylor is active. If Taylor is not active, I'd play Sermon out of the bunch. If he is active, I probably just pivot to either Alexander Madison and Bigsby. It's dependent on the running back injuries of those teams. Right now, I just take Bigsby for now. Football says full PPR. I have JJ, Neighbors, Devontae Smith, Ayuk, Wanda Robinson, BTJ. Should I 1-for-1 Ayuk or Devontae Smith? Yes, I'm okay with that. If you wanted to give away Devontae Smith to get Tyreek Hill in a 1-for-1 capacity, I have no issue with it. Again, there is a gamble related, but you have JJ and Neighbors and Ayuk to suffice in the meanwhile. Thank you. Ty Christensen says, start 2 full PPR, Irving, White, Ford, Tracy, and I have Kyron on a bye week. Got it. So if Singletary's out, Tracy's the number 1, and you'd play him alongside of Rashad White. If, in fact, Singletary is not out, you would play Bucky Irving and White against the Saints. Thoughts on AD Mitchell? I mean, he saw himself a lot of opportunity last week, but unless Joe Flacco's the quarterback, I don't trust it. Chicano Raider says Tank Bigsby. Okay, I think we took care of that one already. Yeah, we did. Okay, cool. All right. We had a couple more super chats sent in. I'm going to answer those, and then that's what we'll be done for the afternoon. Thank you guys again for supporting the channel and rolling through. All right, so we had a question that came in from Carlos Bruno who says, trade Murray. Okay, we took care of that one. Never mind. Miggs sends in a question. Says, start one, BTJ, Sermon, Tolbert, half PPR. BTJ, I don't love the matchup for BTJ, but it's hard not to play him. If we're in a situation in a half PPR where Taylor's inactive, you just play Sermon there. Otherwise, I could justify the idea of playing Tolbert over BTJ. I could justify it because of the Jalen Johnson matchup. I could. Rockout sends in a question, says, I got a trade offer. My K9 and Evans for Chase and second offer. Okay, so your K9 and Evans for Chase. Okay, and then your second offer is your K9 and Higgins for Diggs and Aaron Jones. Ooh. By quarterbacks, Purdy, Fields, and Tua. Okay. I mean, really not even looking at the context of your team. I think I keep in every scenario. I don't actually make any moves. I'd rather just keep the team that you have. I'd rather wait for Puka to come back than for him to have like fully healthy week and then to make a move. I don't think I actually want to trade prior to that existing. Because I don't think you need to move Higgins or Evans. If you felt so confident in like K9 and Evans are going downhill and you needed to cash out on them, then sure. But I don't think they are, to the extent to where I'm very comfortable just keeping them as is, considering from your team, Rockout, I'm trying to get rid of Stevenson. I'm trying to get rid of, at least Jamison Williams, even willing to trade, Wan'Dale Robinson here, Dowdle. Those are the guys I'm trying to get rid of, not your studs. Thank you. Connor says, Bowers, Kelsey, Smitty, AJ, BTJ, Ayuk, Reed, Kenneth Walker, Connor, Kyron, Sharbs, JSN, Hurts, Burrow. Should I trade Okay, you have Hurts and Burrow. One of them has to go. If I'm suggesting one of the two to be traded, it's trading away Burrow. Anyway, should I trade Connor and Smitty for Gibbs to bolster my running back room? Considering you have Bowers and Kelsey, one of those has to be traded, okay? Obviously, it would be after this week. You have Smitty, AJ Brown, BTJ, Ayuk, Reed. Considering what you have on roster, you have a lot of ridiculous receiving depth. I don't mind that. You're just in a really, you have an ultimate team. You've built an ultimate team. So yes, if you want to take this trade, I don't have an issue with it. I think it actually helps you in the long run. But again, eventually you need to trade one of those quarterbacks and one of those tight ends. Thank you. Fury says, would you trade Bijan and Chase Brown? Sorry, Bijan, Chase Brown, and Eckler for JT and JSN? No, I'd rather have the Bijan, Chase Brown side of that deal. Thank you. Giggs sends in a question. Says, Swift or Bigsby for McLaurin, Mooney, or Brian Thomas Jr.? You can trade away Bigsby for one of those options, then you do it immediately. Give me McLaurin or Brian Thomas back for Bigsby immediately. Not even close. Actually, you know what? I'd be so willing to trade Swift and Bigsby for McLaurin and Brian Thomas 2 for 2. That's what I'd actually be willing to do. But yeah, if you want to make those trades, yes, let's take it. Absolutely. Matt Glore with the final question of the day says, Dynasty PPR, trade Shakir and Hunt for Coleman. Keon Coleman, I'm assuming, right? And a 25 third? Yeah, look, here's the thing. Eventually, Keon Coleman's going to have to be the wide receiver one on the outside. He's going to have to step up further beyond what he is currently outputting. So, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't have an issue. Again, Hunt is fodder at that point. You're getting a 25 third for Hunt, and you're just trying to bank on the idea that Coleman will be the better wide receiver of the two. That's fine by me. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. I'm queuing the double helix. I'm going to watch the rest of this Dodger game. Enjoy the rest of your night. Much love. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace.